we had as directed.
Sorry. See,
No, that's okay. And then keep plank engagement, hug your elbows toward ribs and lower towards the ground. We had directive and operational, only because we were thinking like keep plank engagement may feel different or look different to other people.
Yeah, I can get onto that. Also, the concept of hugging might be more operational too. I don't know, but yeah, we could do a little bit of both.
Bend your elbows no more than 90 degrees. We had as directive.
Yep, I agree.
Engage core and quads. We had as operative.
Yep.
And then elongate from heels to head as you lower down. We also had as operative.
Yeah, I agree. We had some discussion about that last one, the concept of elongation. It's really operative, right? It's a sensation, finding that elongation and lowering, but it also could be integrative as well, because it is this bizarre, like you're asking somebody to feel like they're stretching and moving down at the same time. So that can be a little bit more complex of a move. And this chaturanga in general is complex, right? When you break it down, it's actually not nearly as easy as people make it look. So yeah, that's great. I love that. Is there anything that you guys would want to add there? Sometimes you guys come up with extra cues. You don't have to. I just didn't know.
Jen, you look like you're like ready to say.
No, it's okay. You're doing
great. Question. Jen was wondering if there were like good integrative cues, and we came up with a couple of them. I know one that I said was like shine energy forward from the crown of your head. You know, you could have like energy from heels to. We said that too, like a line of energy. I think that was
Megan.
Yeah, line of energy from the heels to the crown of the head.
I like that, a line of energy. More, I think that's more than like crown of the head, Austin. Not that you can't use that cue, but the concept of like drawing it through the whole body so that it's this stable hold, right? I think I like that a lot. The thing is that you can use integrative cues here, and I love that you're being creative and thinking about that. It is probably one of the more fast postures you're going to go through.
The idea here was to use like an integrative cue later in the sequence.
Yeah.
You know, where you're done with all the like, here's the specific cues, and you don't have to give those later on. So maybe you can invite them.
No, I like that. And you know, that might resonate with people in a different way when they hear that. Because most people will not admit it, but they struggle with this posture. It's just really not that excitingly fun. It's a really bad push-up, it's like not a bad push-up, it's like it's a true push-up. It's interesting, in the fitness world, push-ups I've noticed are moving towards more chaturanga style based push-ups now.
Yeah, my husband's in the Army, and he said it's totally changed in PT.
Yeah, it's not this wide anymore. It's in, right? And that is actually one of the practices you could give someone that's trying to get stronger in chaturanga is outside of class. They do chaturanga push-ups, and they can start on their knees because their knees are down. And always people can do chaturanga on knees. You know how we often, when we lower to cobra, first we'll do knees, shoulders, chest, or whatever, you kind of make that roll down. But people could always stay on the knees to do a chaturanga in essence, right? Because they're using the arm muscles there and they're strengthening it. Awesome. Great, you guys. All right, let's pop to up dog. Who? I don't remember now. Was it Laura?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to share my screen again, if that's okay.
Yeah, so this group was a genius. They shared their screen and started putting in all of their cues. So next time, if you want to do that when you go into group, you can.
Does anyone feel so led to talk?
Mm-hmm. I can talk if you want.
Cool.
I just can't see. Okay, here we go. So for spinal extension, we said press hands into floor, bring chest forward, Shoulders away from ears.
Yep.
Wrist extension, press your hands into floor, bring chest forward, palms of hands and tops of feet touch mat. Slight bend in your elbow, engage glutes and quads, thighs lift.
So
Uh,
go
oh.
to, sorry, hang on, Laura.
Uh-huh.
In the group, tell me why are we putting engage glutes and quads, thighs lift for wrist extension?
We felt like when you're lifting your thighs up off of the ground, the weight goes into your hands and into your feet. So therefore it creates more extension on your wrist because you're
Okay.
supporting that.
Okay, that's cool. I think that's nice. Well, you always have these interesting, you have an interesting view. I really appreciate it. Because that wouldn't have occurred to me, but yeah, I get that. And sorry, you're gonna see me looking that because your faces are all over on my second screen. So I can, when I'm looking at it.
So, and then elbow extension, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Elbow extension, slight bend in your elbows, press your hands into floor, bring chest forward. You're happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Shoulder
Yeah,
extension. Sorry, I'm always waiting for your reaction. Shoulder
Yeah, I'm sorry.
extension.
I'm looking at my screen. I'm looking at
Yeah.
mine and yours right now, so I'm trying to read. So slight bend in the elbows. Yep. Press
Okay.
your
and then-
hands into the floor. Bring your chest forward. Assist. It gives you more elbow extension.
Mhm.
And then, did you tell me another one or not?
No.
No. So you could say here, also shoulders away from the ears a little bit, because as you pull your shoulders down, you almost create more extension, but it's not necessary. The two that you have are spot on. So that's good.
Okay. And then shoulder extension, shoulders away from ears. Press your hands into floor, bring chest forward.
Shoulder extension, okay, shoulders away from the ears.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Press
Put your
hands
hand-
into floor and bring chest forward.
Yep. Yes.
Scapular depression, scapular retraction. Press hands into floor, bring chest forward, shoulders away from ears, slight bend in elbows. Hip
Yes.
extension, engage the glutes and quads, thighs lift. Flip tops of feet, press hands into floor, bring chest forward. And then we had a big discussion because we were thinking it could be every cue, because it's the point of hip extension is kind of the point of up dog.
Yes, it is. Oh, I love it. Nice. Good.
And then knee extension, engage the glutes and quads, thighs lift, palms, hands, tops of feet touch mat. An ankle plantar flexion, flip to tops of feet. And then as far as directive,
Hey, hang on, Laura, just a second. Go scroll back up because I think you're excellent job, but I want to make sure everybody's getting this. Is everybody hearing this?
Sure.
Because she's kind of quickly going through, which is taking me a minute to like look back and forth. Everybody all right? All right, all right. Will you scroll? Oh my God, that was total Matthew McConaughey. Did you hear me? Did you hear me to catch me? I did that at my brother. I went, all right, all right, all right. Love it. I think he should run for governor of Texas. I would have voted for him if I lived there. By the way, his book, not to make a total bizarre tangent, but I am Green Lights, super cool. Will you just scroll back up, Laura? Let me just look down that list again one more time, just all the way back up to the very top, and then I'll tell you when to scroll down. So spinal extension, press your hands on the floor, bring your chest forward. Extension, shoulders away from the ears, adds to it. Yep. Wrist extension, press, palms, slight bend, engage. Okay. Slight bend and elbows, push your hands into the floor, shoulders away from the ears. Okay, perfect. You can scroll down now. Okay, now we can go to,
directive. And can I just say you should listen to the audiobook because he's the one that reads it.
I have listened to it. It's great. Well, if you like his voice, if you don't like his voice, it'll be real annoying.
Yeah, but okay. So flip tops of feet directive.
Yep.
Press your hands into floor, bring chest forward, directive and operative.
Yeah,
Engage.
tell me, somebody in your group, tell me why operative, or Laura, tell me why operative.
Seems like we've kind of come as a group to making press, like press is an operative.
Oh, I got it. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Got it.
Engage glutes and quads, operative and directive, or thighs lift is directive.
Yeah.
thighs
And
lift
I would, I
directive.
mean, it's more in general, it's just an operative cue, right? Like it kind of all flows together, but yes, thighs lift is more directive. Engage glutes and quads is more operative. So.
Slight bend in your elbows, directive.
Mhm.
Shoulders away from ears, directive.
Mhm.
Palm of hands and tops of feet touch mat, directive.
Yep.
And then we had a question, if this cue effectively clues you into utilizing arm and back
Chain muscles.
back chain muscles. Is there like a better way to say it?
So
Yeah,
the reason we came to this was Monica brought up that we have all sorts of different bodies in our classes,
Mhm.
and some people, other parts of their leg are still going to touch even if they are fully engaged.
100%. There's no question that it will, especially depending on the layer, the level of strength as well, right? So people that lack the strength to necessarily hold their body up will have things touching. People that have different body habituses will have stuff touching. Ideally, to be in a safe shape, you'd sort of like to have it be. Well, you can do, somebody asked a question here, so let me answer these all together. So the question in the chat box is, out of curiosity, is there significant risk in dropping below 90 degrees in a low plank position? Oh, low plank. Sorry, Bryce. I thought it was, I'll come back to that in a second. So in up dog, so what is up dog with the legs off the, what does up dog look like? What other posture does it look like if our legs were on the ground? Does anybody know? Yes, Jen.
Cobra?
Yeah, I think we call it, Megan, yeah. King cobra is what people, so when you have your hands straight out, you're pressing and you lift up, right? It's hard for you to see. We'll do it when we're in class together. But essentially, the up dog is king cobra with more spinal extension and then this lift off the ground of the lower body, if you will. So some people are and are not going to do that. And the question, so what was let me hear the question again, because you guys took it away from my screen. I want to make sure I answer it effectively. Someone can just read it to me.
Leilani's the only one who can see it because it was on her screen.
Where'd she go? Oh, she must have gone away.
I think it was if it was like really if the cue.
Oh, there's another cue.
Yeah, because what was it? Pressing hands and feet into the mat.
Yeah, palms of your hands and tops of your feet touch the mat. Is there another cue that you could use? So the cue here is trying to get people to lift the body up off the ground, right? So you could say, lift your quads off the ground, lift knees off the ground, press into the hands with so much strength that your lower body starts to lift off the ground. Something like that. Does that make sense? Again, this is like chaturanga. You're not seeing people hold this for very long. So to get cues, most of the cue is getting people into the posture, not necessarily once they're in holding the posture. But you could say that press into the hands, the palms of your hands, and press into the top of the feet so strongly that you feel your legs start to lift off the mat.
Because the main part was because maybe for individuals who have a little bit bigger or different size body. Yeah. So like, okay. Or chest area maybe.
Yeah. Continue to engage that. And you could also always say, you may not feel your legs lift off the ground, but create the sensation as if. Find more engagement through the quads, engagement through the knee. Yeah, well.
Really quick. That was really quick. I was going to ask the next question beyond that.
Yeah.
Part of our conversation, we started talking about like flipping your toes when you're going from up dog to down dog, and when that
Happens.
should occur, what is ideal with that, or like what some more nuances of that movement?
Yeah, we can work on that when we're more together so we can watch people do that. So I have a really hard time rolling over. So you'll see people roll over their foot and like in both ways, they sort of roll both feet together and put their tops of the feet down, and then they can but I don't have the capability, or haven't really figured out the neurologic connection to do it. So I have to do one foot and then the other to find myself stable in that. I think most people probably do that, but I got to be honest, I've never really watched people's feet doing that. I always have a conversation in my head, like, am I doing that? Like, can I try it this way? So let's just watch it when we're together. I don't think that there's particularly an ideal, because it's going to depend on the person's body shape and size and their strength capability. How they make that transition from chaturanga into it, And I will say, the thing I have noticed is that the people that can do 2 feet at a time, I'm always impressed. I'm like, how do they do that? My body can't figure that out yet. So yeah, I don't know if there's an ideal, to be really honest, but we'll watch and see. Bryce, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for me, like, I figured out how to do that, but it took me a long time, and I had to get a lot more flexibility in my toes. Like, it wasn't until I had the yoga toes for a lot of practice that I was able to find that rolling motion that allows them to kind of roll over without causing pain or injury.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure you need to actually roll, right? Like, I actually feel like I step out of it. I like hurt. Will, you're shaking your head. Yeah. My ankles, I don't trust my ankles enough to have that mobility to do that. And some people that don't have the mobility in the ankle if plantar flexion for you is hard, you're going to struggle, like gracefully rolling over and putting the foot flat down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, was that a semi answer?
Yeah, I think seeing it in class and seeing the different, like, where the pressure points are and actually having people demonstrate will be super helpful. Yeah. I mean, something we talked about, like you said, the strength, we were like, a lot of it kind of also comes down to your upper body strength and your shoulder strength, and being able to, when you shift up into down dog and lift your hips up, almost like when you jump through, shifting that weight onto your hands so there isn't the pressure point on your toes as you roll back into.
Yeah, 100% agree. And yeah, and it goes both ways, making transitions into and out of it. Okay. What did we just finish? Up dog. So now we're in chair, right? So let me go to my third one. Anybody have any comments or thoughts or questions about that? Yeah, we'll play with those too.
And I'm sorry, I posted the question in chat, and it was for low plank. It didn't occur to me until we were moving into upward dog, so I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, well, let me go back to that.
Curious if essentially, like, I've been taught perfect push-ups to be like, you do hug the elbows in, but then you're supposed to drop until your nose and chest touch the floor. And just, is there significant risk in allowing yourself to drop past that 90-degree mark in that chaturanga low plank position?
So in theory, no, because if you're doing a push, like we just talked about, push-ups, like you can keep and maintain that form, go all the way down and press all the way back up. Where there could be significant concern is when the strength is not available to people. So as they lower, first of all, they might not even be able to get to 90 degrees. Remember that most people are going to be above 90 degrees because it just takes so much effort and strength to be at 90 degrees. Now you're asking people to lower down. So what will happen is the points where they have least amount of strength, they start to give. So they'll droop in their hips or they lift the hips up. They lose the engagement of the core because they're tipping into their shoulders too much. So now we have a ton of pressure into the shoulder joint in the front part of it. And they lose the form and the arms will kind of wank out to the side. That was a terrible word. I don't know why I said that. It's not a really nice word in the English language. But I think it's funny. So they'll lose form and shape, which is when you lose form and you lose strength, that's when you're prone to injury, right? Like that's where people injure themselves. So in theory, no, if you have the strength and the capacity to stay in that alignment and strength, and you can go down without putting your knees down, no problem, right? Totally okay. It's just that a lot of people don't necessarily know what the alignment for their body, and they don't have the strength to do that.
Gotcha.
So-
And I understand, like, from the yoga perspective, especially where you're moving into like an upward facing dog, it doesn't really make sense to drop past that point. I was just curious if there was, other hidden risks in allowing that. And I see your point of, like, if you don't have the strength at that point in time to be moving into that position, that it can compromise safety in your body.
Yeah, totally. That was a good question, Bryce. Any other comments, concerns, questions? No, okay. Yeah, it'll be fun to do these in person together. And maybe Amy will be with us. Because Amy, I told you, well, maybe when you learned it, she talked about it. I don't know if she taught you this series, but Amy broke her collarbone. Hang on. A while ago. And so Amy really had to learn really like what it took to do chaturanga into up dog, because when you have a broken collarbone, the majority of the strength is coming from this portion, right? And so she teaches a really awesome workshop. She taught it last year. I'm sure she'll teach it. She taught it earlier this year. I don't know when she's going to teach it again, but she really does. Did you go to it, Jen? Yeah, it's good. Yeah. She has some really great pointers for it. So I'll see if she can. She started working on Sunday mornings now as a trainer, but see if she can come hang out with us, because she's got just a lot of great insight from having an injury in that space. Okay, let's pop over to chair. That would be.
Anyone feel like speaking? No.
Anybody in Brandy's group?
I can. I don't mind.
No one's jumping at it.
For axial extension, we have hips back, knees forward, and then arms lifted, shoulders soften. Shoulder flexion.
Oh, hang on. I'm going to go back. So you have hips back, knees forward.
Mhm.
Because the theory is that as the hips pull back, you're drawing the lower portion more into extension of the spine.
It was just kind of like elongating overall as you, I feel like those two moves together make it axial extension.
I see what you're saying. So the hips back and then arms overhead, those together create the extension. Okay, I see what you're saying, because I don't have that, but I like that concept. And so, yeah, I'm going to keep that. So do you see what she's saying, you guys? As the hips come back and the arms go forward, it's the combination of the two. Because if you put them apart separately, they don't really necessarily correlate directly to creating axial extension, but together they're opposing forces and they're helping to create that. And so that's brilliant that you guys thought through like that. The other one that I would add here, the very last one, if you could take a guess who made us shoot lasers in. Anybody, do you want to take a guess who that was? Yes, Austin. Yeah. He's like, no, we're leaving it in there. Shoot lasers. I was like, okay. So this activation of the fingers actually gets people, if you do it, you feel like you're like, oh, it actually makes me create extension through the arms and the body. But yeah. So I like those. I like that all together. I'm going to add those into mine, and I'm going to now use that going forward. Thank you.
Cool, cool. Shoulder flexion, we had arms lifted, so, shoulders soften, and then activating fingers.
Yeah. And then again, here, remember, it's the concept of, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this in posture clinic again, but the softening of the shoulders, not the downward, not drawing the shoulders down, because then we're creating that compression in through the scapular area that we don't really want. So, yeah.
Elbow extension, arms lifted, shoulder soften.
Yep.
Hip flexion, hips back, knees forward.
You got it.
The hip adduction, stabilizing was feet together, or hip width apart, and then the hip back and weight in heels. Sorry, I abbreviated all of them, so I don't know.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So tell me the first one again.
The
Feet together.
feet together.
Yep. And then you guys had weight and heels.
Yes, and then the hips back, knees forward.
Okay, so I agree with the feet together, knees together. Does everybody get why we say adduction here? Kind of, sort of. You want me to talk about it for just a second? Okay, so there's two things that we could have here. Traditionally, when we're doing this particular chair, most of the time at Cambio, you see people with their legs apart, right? There's a little bit of space. If someone's legs are together and they were touching in chair, that would actually, they would be doing abduction, right? The legs would be together. Wait, okay, I'm going to walk through this. So they would be together and they would be abducting. People that have the legs apart, that's an adduction. The leg is more apart. But what's happening is that both an abduction and adduction, you're using the adductors, you're engaging through the outside of the musculature. When you're in abduction, you're doing both. You have inner thighs turned on and outer thighs turned on, outer glutes turned on to keep you stabilized in that really compressed position. When the legs are apart, remember, you'll hear people say, you'll watch when you see people in chair, and we'll do this together, the knees start to tilt in or the ankles start to tilt in. So in order to offset that, we engage the adductors on the outside. So we turn those on. The abductors are working as well, but just in this stabilizing concept, the adductors have to be on to keep the legs in a parallel and in relationship to each other. Does that make sense? Okay. So hips back, knees forward. Yeah, I mean, if you do hips back, I think hips back, knees forward is more hip flexion than adduction, but but I could see how it can assist in that. And then weight in the heels, as you tilt the weight back into the heels, again, that's kind of this hips back thing. I could see, yes, you could turn those on a little bit more. So that's fine to keep those there.
Cool. And then knee flexion, we had the feet together. And then the hip back, knees forward.
Yes, you got it.
And the ankle dorsiflexion was the weight in your heels, and then hips back, knees forward.
Yep, exactly.
And we thought they were all directive, and then the activating fingers, the shooting lasers, was operative.
Yeah. So I would say the other one that you could offer as operative is the arms lifted overhead. That's more directive, but when we say shoulders soften, that gives us a little bit more operative. And then we had a little bit of discussion, this concept of weight into the heels could be a little bit more operative, is that it's kind of like we want people to feel the sensation of dropping into their heels, right? From like weight into the heels isn't necessarily straight directive. So I have that kind of both.
Yeah, we talked.
Yeah, I got it like it's both. So depending on how you interpret that. And I mean, really, if you took shoot lasers, it'd kind of be integrative. Because you got to be a mat. You got to really think through that one. Yeah, great. That's perfect. All right. So now we're going to go to lunge. So what group was that? I think it's Bryce and Scarlett and Aubrey, right? Yep. Okay. Bryce, you
And-
got this one?
I can talk through this one unless you wanted to, Scarlett.
She's giving you the thumbs up.
Alrighty, so for axial extension, we said back leg engaged and level hips. And then for shoulder flexion, we said step the foot between the hands.
Yep, I like that. I don't
And
actually have
same-
necessarily anything for shoulder flexion, but yeah, I mean,
Because like you have to, like, in order to have space to bring your foot in between, you have to have your arms
Yeah.
up into flexion.
Yeah.
And then same thing for elbow extension, because again, you need to have that space, and so that causes the elbow to have to extend.
Yep.
And then for front leg knee extension, we said step the foot between the hands and then also ankle stacks under the knee.
yeah, I agree.
And then for front leg hip flexion, we said actually all of the cues. Stepping the foot between the hand requires that flexion, and then ankle stacking under knee just kind of holds that in position. Back leg engaged also holds that position, and the hip leveling the hips and that hip stabilization will also impact that
What, Bryce, say that, is that for front leg
hip
hip
flexion.
flexion? So
Mhm.
you added back leg engaged. You want back leg engaged in order to assist with front leg.
Yeah, that if you
Okay.
like, if you don't engage that leg, then you may have less flexion in the front hip. And so once you engage that leg, that can create greater flexion there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, because I don't have back leg engaged. I don't think it has to be there in order to help with hip flexion. However, I like what you're saying. It in fact assists with it. So you would be perfectly fine putting all four of theirs there. I just want to make sure people looking at this is a little confusing, and they're going to be like this the way we're going to walk through the Warrior series here. And so we have typically like 4 cues. We have front leg, what's happening with the knee, back leg, what's happening with the knee, front leg, what's happening with the hip, and back leg, what's happening with the hip here. So you guys
Gotcha.
see that. Yeah. You guys figured that out because you had to. But for
Yeah.
everyone else just looking at this, that's why that's there. It's a little confusing. We have to take into account that our legs are split apart, right?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect.
And then for front foot ankle dorsiflexion, we said step the foot between the hands and then ankle stacks under the knee.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
And then back leg hip extension was step the foot between the hands, because that creates that initial
Mhm.
extension. And then back leg engage increases the extension, and then leveling the hips as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And then back leg knee extension was the back leg engaged and the leveling the hips.
Yeah, I would say though, the leveling the hips, it's not, I can move my hips separate of my knee. So you're not wrong. Right, here's my famous line. You're not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on the body type, right? So they definitely go together, and that's totally fine. If you guys want to add that in there. But I think they can be, really, it's just engagement of the back leg. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
And we figured that was kind of the primary one, but yeah.
Yeah.
Just depending on the body, I think you can get a little in there. And then for back foot ankle dorsiflexion, we said just back leg engaged.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of helps to put it into dorsiflexion. Yeah, and then what do you got for?
So we said that the transitional cue step the foot between the hands was directive. And then for the normal cues, the ankle stacks under the knee. We said that was directive, although you could potentially make a case for it being operative, just with people not maybe having familiarity with the idea of stacking joints.
Yeah.
And then for back leg engaged, we said operative primarily because engaged is more of like a sensation. I mean, it is what's happening, but it's also a sensation. It's something you're trying to feel.
Agreed.
And then leveling the hips, we said that was operative as well, even though it doesn't have necessarily some of those keywords that we associate with that. I think a lot of people have a lot of, they don't really recognize what their hips are doing very much. And so the idea of leveling the hips can be, force them to think a lot more about what they're doing.
Yeah, and I would actually say that's integrative, to be honest. I think we talked about this maybe at some other point. But leveling of hips is a real integrative cue. Level your hips.
Mhm.
That takes a lot of understanding, like you're saying, Bryce. Where are my hips? What are they doing now in space? And what does level for my body look like? I don't even know what that feels like. I don't know what that looks like if I don't have mirrors. How does my proprioception play into that? How do I understand what that looks like? So level hips is a pretty integrative cue. So you might have to be creative in how you you work people through this. This is a pretty sparse amount of cues for a lunge, isn't it?
It is. We talked about that a little bit, and we saw the note underneath about engaging the inner thighs and the adductors turning on. Does that correspond with like the 3 notes in the section where under like axial extension and then front leg knee flexion and front leg hip flexion, or were those separate pieces?
Yeah, so, well, yes, I agree. So the engage inner thighs, that's just a note more for me to tell you guys. So your inner thighs have to turn on, which are your abductors, even though I have adductors there. Your inner thighs turn on, the abductors turn on. At the same time, that front leg, the bent knee, the adductor has to be equally on so that the knee doesn't turn in, right? So it's not like that was my shorthand for that. So the inner thighs turn on. So this is where we talked about we might have like briefly touched on this, where people can sag into the pelvis, into the joints here. They don't have to necessarily have those inner thighs turned on or even engagement of the pelvic floor or your quads or your hamstrings turned on in that bent leg. You can hang out in there pretty easily, not doing anything. So we want to make sure we have that engagement and that sort of that upward. Have you guys learned values yet? Oh, never mind that.
Not yet.
Well, there's this sort of this upward energy that happens, and when you learn values, you can report back to me which value that is. So, and Bryce, you were asking, does it go with say your thing again? Because I think I answered.
We weren't sure, like they all use the asterisk, and we weren't sure whether that was related, so that those notes underneath were related to that final note, or if those were just separate notes for each one.
Oh yeah, no, I don't do a really good job with my asterisks. They're more for me. So so when we say the extensors are working, when I show you this when we are together, but when you have your knee bent, right? So what are your extensor muscles? Do you guys remember? The extensors of the knee are your quads, the front, right? The quads. The flexors are your hamstrings. That's what keeps your knee bent. So your hamstrings are on here because our knee is flexed, right? But that's what I was just talking about. In order to maintain this position, you also need to turn the quad on. The extensor has to be on in it to really do it. So your whole thigh is engaged.
Gotcha.
You can't really not turn on your quads. You got to have those on. So that's different than the abductors and the adductors.
Gotcha. Okay.
But so in theory, what we're saying is all of the muscles in the legs, for the most part, they're all working. There's some that are more the major players, but really it's a strength. You could really use yoga as a strength class. If you're doing it correctly and you're really using, it's a body strength class, right?
Definitely.
Turns out. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So Perfect. So we got through those. Does anybody have questions about those particular 4 postures? No? Yeah, okay. So let me look at my thing. So we have warrior 2, extended side angle, reverse warrior, and boat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in and I'm gonna assign these back to you. So we'll do the same breakout rooms again. So we'll go through and do the next 4 postures, but we're not gonna have time to walk through all of these. So we'll take, 20, 25 minutes to walk through these. Some of you guys are gonna have an easier time than others because the cue, as you know, is stay in warrior 2. And then we'll just see what we can get through, but we might get through one of them. We might get through warrior 2, and then I'm gonna let you guys, I'm gonna let you go early today. Cool. No one's gonna complain about that, are you? Yeah, no, I don't think so. All right, so let me see if I can get my breakout rooms back. Oh no, hang on. The thing popped out of the. There it is. Okay. I think it's kept you all. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's kept you all there. Lauren, I'm gonna have to add you back to room 4. So let's do this. Let's go. Let me pull this back up so I can assign these to you guys again. So we'll go the opposite way. Oh my God. Sorry, my computer's going crazy. Warrior 2. I'm gonna go, we're just gonna skip and go, we're gonna start down at room 2. So Laura, your room has warrior 2. Room 3. Anastasia, you guys have extended side angle. And you take care of yourself if you need, okay? And reverse warriors. So Bryce and Aubrey, Scarlett, and then Lauren, I'm gonna add you back there. You guys reverse warrior. Yours is not gonna take you 25 minutes. So enjoy discussion amongst yourselves. See if you can get creative and come up with some other interesting things. And then room 1, you guys get boat. Again, yours probably won't take 20 minutes. The first 2 folks, I'm sorry, first 2 groups, 2 and 3. So Austin, room 1, you got boat. Cool. Okay, off you go. I'm gonna pause recording too.